Welcome to Unveiling Death. I am Rabbi Jeffrey Weill. The hospice volunteer, Kindness is King, with Jack Lauwasser. Jack Lauwasser, a lifelong Chicagoan, began volunteering for JourneyCare Hospice after the death of his son-in-law, Josh, his memory for blessing, who spent his final days at JourneyCare. Jack is recently retired from the paint business. He is currently chair of the Religious Services Committee of our congregation, Ezra-Habonim, the Niles Township Jewish Congregation. I was honored to officiate at the marriage of Jack to Jackie in 2019. Before we begin, the editor and creative director of Unveiling Death podcast is heading to college. Thank you, Sammy Weill, my son. I am so proud of you. Please follow Unveiling Death and share episodes with your friends. I'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to me at rabbiw14@gmail.com. Jack Lauwasser, thank you so much for talking to me on Unveiling Death.
My pleasure.
So Jack, here's my question for you. Why would you spend retirement in a hospice facility? Why would you choose to spend this time of your life at a place like that?
Because there's so much kindness there. I wasn't planning on retiring. I was working and I got sick a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I got real sick and had to take time off work. So as I was off work, thinking that I'd be going back to work in a few months, hopefully, my son-in-law got real sick and he died in JourneyCare Hospice. During that time, I got to know the staff. I got to know the nurses, and they were so kind and so respectful of the patients, the visitors, and each other, that I was starting to think to myself, this isn't real, It's just not real. And so one of the things about respect is they do something called Celebration of Life. They wheel the patients out on a gurney, and all the nurses, all the staff stands at attention. And I'm the last one they see as I hold the door open and because one of the things I have trouble with is what to say at a funeral. So instead of putting myself through that, I take a box of Kleenex with me when I hold open the door for everyone, and usually everyone grabs it and it goes out of our minds.
Oh, so let me ask you a question about that. So you are volunteering at the front, like families see you as they come in to visit their dying loved ones, and families see you at that moment, that celebration of life moment, as they're escorting the deceased. This is what you're describing, out of JourneyCare Hospice, and you are holding open the door. Really, you're the last person that the family escorting their deceased loved one, you're the last person that they're interacting with at that very, very intense moment. And you've decided to have a box of Kleenex there with you. Was that
Right.
your idea? That was your idea to have that Kleenex?
Yeah, because I didn't know what to say. 99% of the people say, sorry for your loss. But I can't say that because that's what I'm supposed to say. I like to say what's in my heart. So that's how I get around it, which I probably would have brought the Kleenex out there anyway.
Right. But I mean, with the Kleenex, you don't really need to say anything at that point. I mean, what can you say that is more, in a sense, eloquent than just being there with a box of Kleenex and holding open that door?
I can say one more thing. You're welcome when they say
Right.
thank you.
And do they typically say thank you?
They all do.
They all do.
They say thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
You know what else? They say thank you so much because they've been through all the kind people, kind nurses, and the kind staff that's there, and they're overwhelmed with kindness as they walk out. And that's our goal.
Right. When you were training for this, you mentioned kindness, and the full disclosure to our many listeners is that Jack and I know each other through our congregation, Ezra-Habonim, the Niles Township Jewish Congregation. Jack is a leader of our religious services or ritual committee, and I'm the rabbi there. And you are very, you want nothing more than for this community, our synagogue community, to lead with kindness. And I'm wondering, when you were training for hospice, to be a hospice volunteer, did your trainers, were they explicit about the importance of kindness, or is this just something that you're bringing to the table?
This is what I bring. It's all, words to use, and it's got nothing about feelings. It's all what you should say and what you should do. And
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to remember all that, even though I write it down.
Right.
And it's just like your question about there's Jewish laws, what we're supposed to say at a shiva.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew that. If you're saying what you're supposed to say, how can you feel it? You just I have to say this, and then you say it.
Right. Yeah, the idea at a shiva is that, number one, not that it's really necessarily feasible, but according to our tradition, Jewish tradition, you don't shiva. By the way, for those who are not Jewish might not know, that's basically the condolence calling for the period of time after the funeral. So where you go to either the deceased home or one of the family members' homes, and you sit with them. You call it sitting shiva. So you're not supposed to say to one of the mourners, you don't even begin the conversation. You're supposed to wait for them to begin the conversation. That can be very awkward for us Americans. We're not accustomed to that. But there are just generally things that you do and don't do. And that is sort of generally accepted. But and so let me just go back. You mentioned Josh, your son-in-law, who died, and I officiated that funeral, and I knew Josh, and they have a little girl, your daughter Melissa, and they have a beautiful little girl, and she lost her father. But do you think that there's any way that you would have ended up as a hospice volunteer if it were not for Josh's time, those 5 days that he spent before he died at JourneyCare Hospice?
Yep, absolutely not. There's no way I would be there.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be selling paint right now. There's no doubt in my mind.
Right. So people don't think that's a euphemism. Jack literally made most of his career selling paint. And so do you think that you would actually you would have gone back to one of the paint stores, which is a career that you really, really liked at this point, as opposed to volunteering at hospice? You'd be selling paint.
I'd be selling paint, there's no doubt. And I even though I got this hospice gig, I still miss selling paint. I did it for 36 years.
Let me ask you a crazy question. What's the connection? What's the overlap or the relationship between selling paint and volunteering at hospice?
Kindness. As Peter Frampton would say, kindness is king.
Did you happen to watch that?
Yes.
I told you. Oh, you did? Okay. So Jack's referring to Peter Frampton being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In his really moving acceptance speech, I recommended that everyone watch it. He said kindness is king, and I was really moved by that. And so how is kindness, you're selling paint, so it's like, we want this paint or that paint. How is kindness related to selling paint?
Because if you're kind, the customers realize it right away, and they're going to buy from you forever if you're kind to them.
Mm-hmm.
And we happen to have a lot of knowledge, so it helped. But just getting people to like you makes you a good salesperson.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you're right. But might be where it's different. I'll just throw this out and you could take a swing at it. So when you're selling paint, if you're being kind and you're also knowledgeable, then you have a customer and you're making money. At a hospice, that kindness has nothing to do with making money. It sort of makes it sound like you're using kindness. You're sort of like using kindness at the paint store because it's good for business. But that's not completely what you mean, I don't think.
It is in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But but it comes naturally. So that's not true. You're kind anyway, so it just happens.
Right.
And hospice, no, you're not getting a customer for the future, but you're making people that shouldn't be feeling good at that time feel a little bit better.
Of all the things that you do at JourneyCare, what basically do you do? And what is the most important thing that you do? But besides the most important thing, I have a feeling that the answer to that latter part of that question is going to be kindness, being kind to them. But like, what else do you do there?
I I check, I keep an eye on the door. I check in the visitors that come in. They have to sign in. I then they do their thing. They go see the nurses. They go see the patients. They go do whatever they're doing, and then as they're leaving, I check them out. That's really all my job is. But I add to it with showing them what room they're in, and I take them to the room instead of just pointing. But like you said, the most important thing is not so much the kindness. It's trying to say something that's going to make them feel better. Try to get them to smile instead of just checking them in and saying thank you. I try and I'll say something like, somebody will have one of those big mugs that hold water. I'll ask them something that's kind of humorous. Do you have anything bigger? And that'll make them smile, and then
Right.
they feel a little better. Unfortunately, by the time they get to the room, it's not like that anymore.
Right. But still, I don't know, you've really opened the door in it literally in a way, or some minded the door literally and opened the door metaphorically too, by just kind of like opening a conversation and making them showing your openness. I mean, that makes a difference. Yeah.
And a lot of times they end up coming back just to have a conversation with me also.
Uh-huh.
So I think those are the most important things. I mean, I check in people and I check them out, but there's more important things that I do. I feel.
Right. Have you had any uncomfortable experiences?
Oh
Anything
yeah,
anything you wish you could do over?
yeah. Two things. One time I asked one of the visitors, "How you doing?"
Mhm.
He got upset and said, "How do you think I'm doing?" And I realized this was one of my first days there. Oh my gosh, what did I say?
So how do you respond to that?
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean anything by it. But I learned I never ask anybody how they're doing.
Right.
The second thing that happened is that recently I sent a visitor to the wrong room, which was on the other side of the building. And they got upset. They mentioned it to me also. And they
Mhm.
actually mentioned it to the nurses too.
Right.
But that's like two things in 6 months. I can't be worried about that.
I think you shouldn't worry about that. You told me one of those vignettes earlier, the one about sending the people to the wrong room, and my feeling about that, and also you're saying how you doing. I mean, I know that you're really sensitive to people's feelings, and that's obviously a good way to be. But these people, even during difficult times, should be kind back and forgiving. You would be, and
I'm not
so
sure. I'm not sure I would be.
yeah.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
If if someone that was close to me was dying, I don't know how I would be.
Right.
And I know how I was when Josh was dying. I was a mess.
Hmm.
I'm not sure how I would be, and I'm not
Okay.
sure how they. Melissa snapped while Josh was dying,
Hmm.
and I saw her snap a few times, and I just oh well, she's
Right.
gonna snap. I don't think about it that much.
I'm wondering. Yeah, I think one reason that I started doing this podcast is to, I don't know. There was a time when I was really, really just petrified of death. I don't think I am anymore. I've got a lot of exposure to it through my work as a rabbi and so forth. But so it's on some level, I'm wondering if I am doing this podcast about death in order to work through my own complicated feelings about this daunting, inevitable thing in my future. Maybe, I don't know. I'm wondering if on some level you decided to be a hospice volunteer for the same reason.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
I'll give you two feelings that happened to me while I was sick. There were a few months where I was real sick, and I wasn't scared of dying.
Mm-hmm.
But as I got better, I realized that I'm scared of dying. I don't want to die. The reason I'm there is only because of what happened with Josh and how I got to know the nurses and the staff and
Mm-hmm.
the vendors bringing flowers in. They make quilts. The vendors are unbelievable. The people are unbelievable. They donate everything. The quilts that go over the dead bodies, they donate them when they get dirty. They come in and they wash them.
Mm.
It's an unbelievable place. I mean, this is all I see all day long,
Right.
and it's to me, it's great.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that there's this sort of this escorting of of the deceased from the premises of JourneyCare, and people sort of line. I think I've seen this. I don't know if it's always the same. Sort of lining the halls, and you're opening the door, and you've got your tissues. It's a very intense moment, and there's music often. And I'm wondering what. First, I'll just ask you, what music have you heard as people are being escorted out? And do you have any idea who chose that music?
70% of the time, it's Frank Sinatra. I did it my way. For some reason,
Uh,
I wouldn't want that.
do you think the deceased people or their families chose that song for them?
Most of them say just play whatever you want to play, and I think that's where they get that song from.
Uh-huh.
I sometimes wonder the difference between a hospice nurse and a hospital nurse. The hospital nurse once in a while cures people, helps cure people, and they have a good feeling. But I can't understand how nurses at hospice can never cure anybody. They can only comfort everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I think once in a while, if I was a nurse, I would really want to cure people, be able to cure someone, and it makes me feel good. It's like when you're doing a job, any kind of job you do, you don't want to be a rabbi that doesn't get happiness out of something. Once in a while, you want to be a rabbi that gets happiness, and you get it all the time. But there's a huge difference between a hospital nurse and a hospice nurse that I think about all the time. I wonder how they do it.
Right. They obviously have very different expectations for their careers and for their days.
And I'm uncomfortable asking them why.
I think you definitely should. I really should have said they have different ways of measuring success.
Right.
Yeah. People like being asked about their careers and what they're doing. So that'd be an interesting conversation to have. So let me get back to the music.
Okay.
When you, Jack Gordon Lauwasser, right?
It's Lauwasser in French.
Lauwasser, warm water. When you
lukewarm water.
Lukewarm water. When you, Mr. Lukewarm Water, it's like there's Luke Skywalker and there's lukewarm water. So when you are being wheeled out, so to speak, and we're all one way or the other going to be wheeled out, what do you think that you might want to be playing at that moment as you are already gone and being wheeled out? But before you answer that question, but I do want you to answer that. I want you to answer that question. But before that, when you were on you're a musical person, you like rock and roll. So when you were on your deathbed, what do you want to be hearing? What's the last thing you want to hear? So start with that.
Well, let me say first, I would rather see the White Sox win the World Series or the Blackhawks win the Stanley Cup. But if I can't get that, then I would want to hear Skating Away on the Thin Ice of the New Day by Jethro Tull. My favorite song of all time. But as I'm being wheeled out, I feel like all we are is dust in the wind.
Dust in the Wind by
Yes.
Kansas. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're going to go from, we're basically, I think, both songs from the great decade, the 1970s. Starting with Skating Away. That's your goal. Those are your golden years. I mean, those are whatever. Take that out. But
those are the years I don't want to talk about.
Golden years, gold, wop, wop, wop. That's David Bowie. But when you are dying, if it's not the White Sox winning the World Series, or if it's not the Blackhawks skating away with the Stanley Cup, if it's not that, you want to be hearing Skating Away by Jethro Tull on the Thin Ice of a New Day, which is interesting because a new day could be like a new beginning, and death is, you're skating away, and the ice is always thin because we're all on thin ice ultimately,
right?
And because life is fragile, and there, we could see death as a new day, perhaps. So that's good. And then Dust in the Wind by Kansas, which conveys this idea that everything is transitory. Nothing's permanent. So would you really rather be listening to the roar of the crowd for those great sports successes over music?
Yeah. Sports to me is number one. The music is number two.
I did not know that.
You know it now.
I know now. I know it now, and so does the entire listening public. Jack Lauwasser, not only do I thank you for all you do for our community here at Ezra-Habonim, the Niles Township Jewish Congregation in Skokie, Illinois, and you do a lot. And I'm grateful to you and your fellow leaders here, and to your lovely wife, Jackie. But thank you so much for this conversation as well.
My pleasure. It was a blast. Let's do it again.
Let's do that. Many thanks to Jack Lauwasser. And of course, thank you, Sammy Weill. Share this episode and follow Unveiling Death. Thank you for listening to Unveiling Death, Eternity in About 24 Minutes, now once a month.